All right, the house is quiet, everybody's gone, and God has been poking at me for a little while, and He's been wanting me to talk about dreams and how He talks to dreams. And just, I know I've talked about it before, but He keeps saying, remind people, this is how I talk, this is how I talk. So, God talks in different ways. It's not just in the Bible. That's what I grew up with. That's the only way He talks is through the Bible. And then through a series of life events, I have learned that He speaks through varied ways. He speaks through people by putting words of knowledge on their heart. He gives them visions. He does all kinds of different things. And one of them is speaking through dreams. And I've always been a vivid dreamer. And that is just how God speaks mostly to me, is through dreams. I am not a big healer. I am not a big intercessor. I'm not a big prophetess, I guess you could say, or I don't give a whole lot of prophecies. I guess that's probably better. I wouldn't say I was a prophet, but I don't give a lot of prophecies. That's just not, He doesn't speak to me in that way as much as He does through dreams. And then I know people who never have dreams. They're like, and I'm like, well, He probably speaks through you to you through different ways. And one thing that I felt like God was saying is that He wants everybody to know that when He speaks through dreams, they can be for different purposes. Sometimes it's to tell you the future. It's to give a prophecy. Sometimes it is to give you a heads up that something's going to happen. Sometimes it steps you through a process. He did that to me quite recently for a number of weeks, telling me this is how it's going to happen. Don't get nervous. This is how it's going to happen. Don't get nervous. At the end of the time, this is what it's going to be like. And it was true to His word. And sometimes He just gives you word to confirm that He's speaking to you or to encourage you. A lot of times, especially at the beginning, He was giving me dreams. They were basically love notes of just how much I love you and how much you are my child, and those type of things. And as you get to know your Father deeper through dreams, then He will give you more in-depth dreams of even telling you what He wants you to accomplish throughout your life. What is His goal for you? What kind of things does He want you to do? So it's quite amazing. So I'm going to kind of give you an example. One of my friends contacted me this past weekend and said, and gave me one of his dreams. And he said I could share it, so I'm going to share it because I think it's a great example to show you how God speaks through dreams. And a lot of people think that there's different types of dreams. In my school of learning from John Redenbaugh, all dreams come from God, and that makes sense to me. There's nothing in the Bible, there's no examples of demons and spirits giving you bad dreams, because if they could do that, they would do that every night. Let's just face it. And all of my scary dreams have been to wake me up enough for me to get the interpretation from God, because it was an urgent message. Okay? So here is something that was shared with me. This dream, this friend of mine was walking with a sibling group. They were homeless. They found a house that looked and felt familiar. They were invited in the house by family that looked and felt familiar. There was some incestuous stuff going on, if you get my drift. So they observed incest, and then the house was kind of like a murder house, and so there was booby traps set up, so the parents were murdering all of the children. But no one seemed worried, and the parents seemed joyful, and the kids seemed calm. And my friend was trying to get them to understand what was happening so that they could be safe. Okay? That was dream. That's pretty awful. That would wake me up in a panic. So he sent it to me, and quite honest, I got it on Friday and I didn't look at it because I was so busy. I get so many just dreams of myself that I don't interpret them unless God says you need to interpret them. And so he sends me dreams when he feels God say, send them to Ginger for the interpretation. And so I waited till Saturday and I opened it up and I was like, oh dear, this is going to take some time with Jesus. And I wasn't getting anything right away. So I started writing down all my symbols and I wasn't getting a whole lot. And I felt like I was getting in the way of it. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to set this aside, make breakfast. And I felt God say, put worship music on. So I put worship music on, and all of a sudden, in my spirit, God said, this is a dream about breaking generational trauma, generational spirit of religion, and what is that called? Generational curses. That's what he said. And I go, whoa. Okay, Lord. That kind of makes sense, because then I started putting pieces together of just these sibling groups and these connectedness, incest, connectedness, of groups being together and tightly knit, and some trauma going on there. And the murder can be some trauma as well as some curses in there as well. And things being familiar, God kept on saying the familiar spirits, like the spirit of religion, which to me is more when you go to church and you do your set things, and then you leave church, and that's church. And you stick to those principles, and you stick like, this is it, this is all churches. And you don't develop that relationship and let the Holy Spirit really fully take over you. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm learning what the spirit of religion is. And that can be passed down from generation to generation. So can generational trauma. That can be passed down. And oftentimes parents don't know that they're traumatizing their children and passing down the trauma that they had to their children. And also generational curses. And the interesting thing about generational curses is that I heard God say that to me, but when I went back to my friend and I said, this is what God said, he said, this is a dream about generational trauma, breaking generational trauma, familiar spirits of spirits of religion, and also generational curses. I didn't tell him generational curses. I just told him the first two, because I'm not confident enough in my knowledge of generational curses to say anything. And so I was like, this is what God is saying. And I went in and kind of talked about it a little bit. And he came back and he said, that's interesting, because I've been breaking those generational curses. And I was like, that's interesting, because I didn't say that's what God said, but that's what God said. Was those generational curses. And I was like, well, this dream is confirming that you are trying to break those generational things. And so we talked about that, unpacked it a little bit. And so that to him confirmed to him of what God is wanting him to do, was to break those generational curses, and stop that trauma. And so to him, that was confirmation and also direction, which is just fascinating. And it was confirmation to me, because let me tell you, every time I get a dream and I sit with that dream, within 3 seconds, if I don't get that interpretation, I'm completely human and think, okay, I'm not this is not my thing. I'm not good at this. God's not going to tell me what the interpretation is. I've lost it. I've done something to disappoint him. He's not going to give me the interpretation. But he will. He will give you it. If you ask it, he will give you it. And sometimes that means you have to take some time and you just have to be with him. And oftentimes that's what he wants. And so I'm learning that more and more of waking up, and the first thing I'm saying is, good morning, Papa. Good morning, guardian angels. Good morning, and just breathing them in a little bit and spending more and more time with them, and not just reading my Bible, even though I do that every day, but in other ways as well. And then he will give you that interpretation, or he will send you to somebody that he's going to speak to you through. So, and that can be very intimidating, because dreams can be very, very intimate. God tells me a lot through my dreams that are things that he has told me or things that he's directed me not to talk about. And if I let someone else have my dream, they may figure out those things. And so that's why, and it's very intimate. Like, God can tell you some very intimate things about you because he knows you so well. And so that can be very intimidating. So I'm lucky that I have friends that trust me and that bring me their dreams once in a while when they feel like God is saying, you need to hear this. You need to hear this. And those murder dreams, let me tell you, God gave me murder dream after murder dream after murder dream, because I was going through a difficult season in my life where we were dividing up and getting rid of my parents' things in their house, and it felt like I was saying goodbye to my mom all over again, and I was struggling with it. And he was giving me these murder dreams, and I finally woke me up, and I'm like, okay, Lord, these have got to stop. And so you've got to give me the interpretation. And I went symbol by symbol, and I looked at it, and I just bursted out in tears, because what it said was, do not worry about your mother. She is free from what jailed her Alzheimer's. She is with me, and she is resurrected, and that's what matters, is holding on to that, and you will see her again. And it was just this whole lovely love note that he gave me through this dream that was horrifying. So don't shy away from those scary dreams, because sometimes those are the ones that God uses to get you to wake up. He's not necessarily installing the spirit of fear in you. He is trying to wake you up, because he is saying, you need to hear this. I've tried for 3 days to get you to hear me. And you are not hearing me, and you need this message today, because you're selling your parents things today. You need to know this. So we have a loving Father who loves us very, very much. And as good fathers are, he can be stern when you don't listen. And sometimes he will use methods to really wake you up to hear him, because he longs for his children to hear his voice. Hear that right now. He longs for his children to hear his voice. Like sheep and their shepherd. So, there's that. Go in his shalom.